A girl reports danger in the alley. The police take the call and head there. However, noticing the number of people, the officer doubts his own strength. He emphasizes that their leader is too strong and he and his partner can't handle it. The cop says the thief will toy with the girl and dump her. Suddenly, an unknown voice commands them to let the woman go. The gang of thugs is surprised by such determination and persistence. The confident speaker turns out to be another law enforcement officer. The gangster starts mocking him. For these actions, the policeman grabs him by the lower jaw and delivers a solid slap with an upward strike. The mafioso falls and writhes in hellish pain. The colleagues and other criminals are shocked by these events. The hero says that such actions bring severe retribution. The gang of punks prepares to take revenge for their boss. The thugs suddenly rush at the defender of order. For these actions, they receive slaps one by one. The colleagues are amazed by the man's cruelty and strength. After being wounded, the gang leader rises with intent to take revenge, threatening to kill the defender. The hero mocks this and asks if he's ever killed anyone. The thug rages, saying he's destroyed more than one and promises to make the cop next on the list. The law enforcement officer claims the criminal has actually never killed anyone. He rages in response and insists he'll easily finish off the defender of order. The cop persistently and monstrously tells him to kill to prove his strength. With a beastly look, he emphasizes that if he can't handle it, he'll finish him off. The crook is terribly frightened by this intention and backs away, asking what kind of monster is before him. The defender says he's a professional gangster hunter. The action moves to a port with containers, revealing the backstory of the main character. He opens one with a group of thugs inside. He says everyone's already gathered and introduces himself as Burning Knife. Another man with the nickname Fire calls out to him and asks why he's late. The main hero asks what the last job waiting for him is. Fire says the head of their gang asked to eliminate Burning Knife. A thug with a massive metal chain attacks him from behind, trying to strangle him. He almost succeeds. The chains wrap around the hero's neck, but he manages to slip out at the last moment and take the initiative. With all his strength, he snatches them from the thug and steps behind to strike him. The attacker falls motionless. With eyes burning with rage, he asks his accomplices what's happening. Fire says it's part of the job and the plan to eliminate the unfit. The silent comrades agree. Former armed allies attack Burning Knife from all sides. However, the hero with the chain in his hands takes control of the situation and lays them out with it. To defend himself effectively, the man uses his knowledge of self-defense techniques. From strangulation by the chain, the thugs die one by one, without the right to escape. Fire is bewildered and disappointed in the accomplice's strength. Having killed all the henchmen, the hero approaches him to find out the reason for this massacre completely. The blonde reaches under his jacket to get the last trump card for murder, a gun. He explains his goal by the gang leader's order and says he wouldn't want to deal with the dark-haired one this way. From the news that this is the boss's command, Burning Knife falls into despair and says he promised to make this mission the final one. Fire aims straight at the heart, keeping his finger ready, but the main hero furiously attacks him. It's shown how the head of the crooks calmly meditates in a Buddhist temple. Suddenly, he gets a call. He asks Fire if everything's ready. Actually, on the other end of the line was Burning Knife, who killed the former accomplice. The elder is surprised by such a turn of events, as he didn't expect the hero to find out about his ritual. He offers him to visit, passing through a trial of 100 henchmen thugs. Burning Knife accepts the challenge without hesitation and prepares the knife for battle slaughter. After cutting through everyone, he finds out his boss's location and asks how a thug can call himself God. The guard unexpectedly pulls out an axe to deal with him, instead of answering. The hero dodges and brutally slashes his groin. After this, reinforcements of henchmen arrive, which Knife destroys one by one. Killing the attackers, he says he gave up everything for the role of a killer. Suddenly, a woman sharply stabs a knife into his back. The guy loses it, turning into a monster. Having killed all the henchmen, the hero stands before the gang leader's gun barrel. Bowing his head, Knife says he promised to let him go live a normal, peaceful life after this mission. He says he's now living a normal life because all typical people die. As a farewell, the leader recites a Buddhist prayer and shoots the young man. The guy wakes up in the hospital and sees silhouettes of police officers before his eyes. Both he and the law enforcement officers are surprised by such a turn of events. A red-haired woman in despair screams at the guy, calling him by a new name, Kyle. The man doesn't understand who they're talking about, so another policeman gives him an ID and tells him to look in the mirror. The document and mirror show identical appearance and name. The former thug is in tremendous shock because he just recently said goodbye to life. Colleagues think he's playing dumb and slap him for wasting time, telling him what happened. It turns out the newly minted policeman previously tried to commit suicide by hanging. The red-haired woman angrily tells him that before this, he wrote the names of senior colleagues in his suicide note. Those higher in rank, Mike and Chuck, tell him that the hero's parents were criminals who hanged themselves. They also accuse the guy of writing their names in the suicide note and want to slap him. The former thug blocks the hit, firmly grabbing the new colleague's arm. Mike rages over these actions and asks the red-haired Charlie if this can be considered attempted murder of a superior. She answers that she sees nothing, as she's brutally pressed to the ground by her partners. Chuck says he can help the unfortunate woman up and roughly grabs her by the hair. Kyle is terribly angered by such injustice and grabs Mike by the arm. He squeezes his colleague's wrist with all his strength, who writhes furiously in pain. The senior starts avoiding strangulation and begs the dark-haired one to let him go. He fulfills the request, but before this delivers an incredibly powerful blow. After it, Mike falls to the ground, and other law enforcement officers look at the newbie in surprise. But the hero doesn't plan to finish and delivers a truly final push between the senior's legs. He writhes in hellish pain as the red-haired woman exhales. Other colleagues are amazed by the hero's cruelty. Before us stands Officer Harrison, who furiously asks why Kyle dared to raise his hand against colleagues. Senior colleagues rush to get revenge on him for the antics. The chief threatens to fire the violator, but he calmly listens to the threats. Kyle heads out of the office when colleagues ask him how he wasn't afraid to cause such a ruckus. They inform him that the chief has a medal and lots of connections in the city, advising him to be careful on the way home. On the way back, the hero realizes that because of this rotten system, he could previously kill peacefully. He recalls the poor childhood of his past life and how the gang leader picked him up. Knife returns to the office to learn more about his new appearance. There, the guy learns that Kyle was also abandoned by his parents there and that he grew up an orphan. The former killer heads to the main police headquarters. There, he meets Senior General Hank, who's studying documents about exposing the gang the hero was from. He sneaks up behind him and holds a pen right near the senior's carotid artery. The hero introduces himself as a former thug. The general doesn't believe this and calls it nonsense. The guy completely retells the story of rebirth, but the senior doesn't care at all. The guy doesn't react, instead offers help with destroying the criminal organization. The general is in despair at such mockery and prepares to drive the man away. For this, he takes out a radio to call state security. However, the device doesn't respond to signals. The superior is in panic. As it turned out, Burning Knife neutralized all law enforcement officers in the building. The stunned general once again asks who's before him. The dark-haired one confidently stands his ground. The guy talks about a long-standing agreement between them. Before us stands a dilapidated and wounded general as the police chief. Burning Knife confidently approaches him and introduces himself. The senior is surprised that the thug is asking him about a mission and not trying to finish him off. The guy reports that the gang leader is deeply surprised by such success in capturing him and sends greetings. Suddenly, the knife removes the protective cop from the umbrella to get the sting and points it at the law enforcement officer's neck. The gray-haired one pitifully begs for mercy. Surprisingly, the young man doesn't attack, but removes his mask and offers to make a deal. He says he's ready to save his life if he catches the main bandit and gives him 3 life sentences. The policeman is surprised because Burning Knife is from the same criminal group. The young man says the group leader must pay for all his misdeeds and puts on the mask. Having finished the story about the agreement, the young man reproaches him for not keeping it. He notes that the former chief was promoted and accuses him that instead of fulfilling it, he was gaining rank. He takes out a pen with a sting and starts threatening the senior until he starts making excuses. Hastily, he says he was gaining promotion to gather more information about the gang. The senior retells how he spoke about the clan investigation before senior management. The general laid out all the monk bandits' plans for colleagues, but they didn't believe him. The highest-ranking one said that if he continues to slander the holy place, he'll be fired. He also warns that religion isn't a topic that law enforcement deals with and orders to stop the investigation. The military man shows all the collected documents to Burning Knife, who carefully studies them. The guy says the investigation was conducted incompetently, but he managed to find the necessary data. The former bandit says that for this, he's willing to spare the general's life for now. After this, he says he'll help him with conducting the investigation. In the police department, Charlie and Chuck are working peacefully. Suddenly, silence is broken by Kyle, who bursts inside and greets them. Colleagues are surprised because they thought he was fired after the stunt. Due to the commotion in the room, another cop bursts in. The man is terribly furious when he sees the dark-haired one at his workplace. He approaches the guy and desperately kicks him out of the service. The guy doesn't react to this at all, and a majestic figure appears behind him. The silhouette turns out to be a lieutenant colonel. Kyle's colleagues are surprised. He reports that he came to visit Kyle and check how he's working. Colleagues are in shock at the senior's visit, who introduces the guy as a savior and tells them to look after him. After the meeting, the men go for a smoke break. Kyle envies the senior for his rank and asks for a favor. A mysterious shadow visits the monk bandit at the Buddhist temple. The mafioso asks who it is. The stranger introduces himself, the one who doesn't forgive insults. The mysterious figure barely manages to enter when the monk, using magical powers, attacks him with all his fury. To neutralize the intruder, the man launches burning incense at him. The masked man skillfully jumps aside so they don't hit him in the face. He demonstratively pulls them out of the wall and says that servants have no right to tarnish Buddha's honor. The head of the thieves furiously once again clarifies the hero's identity. He answers the same. After these words, the thug calls for reinforcements of henchmen. He leaves the stranger face to face with them, wishing him a journey to paradise. The armed group attacks the dark-haired one with full force. The hero attacks the man with a blade and deflects it, delivering an incredibly powerful blow. After this, he picks up the weapon for himself and deflects another attacker with it. Without losing his fighting spirit, the guy attacks a thug with an axe and neutralizes him. Then, he pierces the office worker's henchmen with a dagger one by one. The bandits are amazed by the stranger's beastly strength. Having neutralized everyone, the man furiously heads to the main thief monk. It turns out there's a hidden camera built into the stranger's mask, but the connection is jammed in the temple. Because of this, the man rages and seeks to cut down as many attackers as possible. The mafia head orders the henchmen to stop and hold back. He claims the mysterious guest has a connection with dark spirits and asks him to come closer to look at his face. The dark-haired one starts getting nervous and backing away, tries to avoid dialogue, says that in time he'll learn his essence. The temple servant suddenly attacks the guy with all his strength, trying to rip off the mask. His hand touches the face guard, but the elder doesn't manage to grab the object. Suddenly, something explodes in the temple. The hall fills with gas and dust. The gas turns out to be tear gas. The henchmen ask if everything's okay with the leader. He claims everything's under control since he managed to cover his nose with his hand and snatch the hero's mask. The Buddhist squeezes the hero's artifact with all his hatred and in a fit of anger smashes it. After work affairs, an exhausted general walks in the park. Burning Knife meets with the senior and notes his dilapidated appearance. The man complains about problems due to the guy's antics, beating colleagues, and the disappearance of tear gas. The young man doesn't really care about this, says there would be no problems if they had caught the thug. The old man rages and explains that for this, they need solid evidence for the prosecutor's office, reproaches the dark-haired one that he's a former killer. The guy says he only killed those who deserved it and that for extra chatter, he can do this with the general. He explains that before Themis and the law, everyone is equal and there are no exceptions. The guy doubts the fairness of the judicial system and complains that for such serious crimes, the thug might only get probation. Old Hank says that even in this case, they need ironclad evidence for legal proceedings. Kyle is angry at the complexity of the system and wants to create his own department for operational investigation. The experienced policeman says that for this, you need a special rank. The hero learns that for this, you need a medal and enthusiastically dreams about getting it. Hank says he'll figure it all out himself, but the dark-haired one disappears. In his department, the young man asks Charlie what's needed to get a promotion. She explains that for this, you need a special check. Meanwhile, a drunk woman harasses Chuck. The hero clarifies the time of the next test when the drunk climbs over to him. Charlie answers that for the rank you need a year of service. Meanwhile, the violator gets a slap from the young man. The hero asks if the process can be sped up, and the red-haired one says that for a regular officer, it's at least 10 years of service. The guy clarifies about other possible options for a star. The woman recalls a special promotion. She explains the conditions of this miracle. You need to catch serious criminals and be super persistent. The main hero disappears from the department, leaving minor violators to his colleagues. The man heads to the crowded night streets of the city to search for violators. He talks about his own classification of people by violations in the country. He says there are many petty violators, but he's not looking for them, but for bigger fish. The law enforcement officer's gaze falls on a man handing out mysterious invitation flyers to passers-by. The former killer's eyes burn with desire to get the rank. For this, he heads to the nightclub. Energetic music from the coolest DJ is playing in the room. Suddenly, the sounds stop. Visitors are unhappy because they don't understand the reason. The DJ motivates the crowd to move, says that if there's no drive, there'll be no party either. The most devoted female fans ask the master of the decks for champagne to warm up. For the alcohol, the beauties widely open their mouths, trapping the men in the bonds of love. The DJ offers lonely guys invitations to women of easy virtue. The man throws invitation cards all over the hall and pours champagne so this bright night won't end. Kyle stops the fun, appearing in the middle of the dance floor with a displeased look. The guy catches one of the cards and threatens the master of the decks with prison time, who gets terribly nervous. The DJ starts teasing the hero that girls don't give him any and offers an invitation card to priestesses of love. The dark-haired one reveals to the hall the truth about the magic flyers, that they're just plain drugs. Those present begin to discuss the news unhappily and look at the DJ in despair. The main fashionista is beside himself with anger at the revelation of the flyer's secret, asking who's ruining the buzz. The dark-haired one takes off his hoodie, under which police uniform is hiding. Those present are surprised. The party organizer doesn't understand how security let cops inside and asks his thug friend about this. He doesn't have time to answer because he gets a bottle right in the face. The drink flew from Burning Knife, who's heading to deal with the other instigators of the event. The DJ in panic quickly rushes to the exit, commanding security to get out after him. Fleeing, he warns other staff about the cop raid on the club, but his words don't reach them because Kyle knocks everyone out in his path. The violators try to escape through the back entrance, but it turns out to be blocked. The dark-haired law enforcement officer approaches from behind. The club entourage panics badly. The DJ notices that the main hero is alone, without a group, and says he'll easily handle such a weakling. He gives the command to accomplices not to shy away from using the dirtiest tricks. For this, the men take out red flyers with drugs and use all the power from them. The substances turn them into rabid monsters ready to kill everyone in their path. However, Kyle's fists turn out to be a stronger weapon and slash the violators' faces. The blows are so strong that one flies back a meter. Another thug panics at such strength. The policeman says that in such cases, it's better to obey the law and keep your mouth shut. The instigator of the event is shocked by such strength and falls to the floor in fear. The law enforcement officer, with a stern look, confidently and gracefully strides toward him. The criminal begs for mercy and offers the cop to settle peacefully. The main hero reduces his beastly rage and is ready to discuss a compromise. The DJ offers all the goods, from drugs to the hottest girls and money. However, Kyle is only interested in promotion, so he attacks the bandit. The news reports the exposure and arrest of a famous drug lord. The senior from the police praises the young man for exposing the criminal and congratulates him on promotion to corporal. The main hero smugly thanks him and starts rummaging in the case, which angers the chief, who recalls his violations. From the suitcase, the man takes out a wrapped bundle and presents it, telling that these are those same drugs. This violation of regulations drives the chief out of his mind. He demonstrates the magic substance to the commander and asks if this plant is known to him. The man recognizes it as magic substances from Miss Flower. The woman is known for her mastery in making flyers that destroy people from within. The lady manages her own henchmen who help her carry out reprisals against the unfaithful. The lady reviews the newsfeed about recent destructions of criminality in the area. She says that due to the absence of colleagues, she'll have to deal with the cops herself. The main hero talks about Flower's vile nature and her craft. To implement the revenge plan, the hero diligently trains in complete silence. The man holds the weight of his muscular body on only 3 fingers of one hand. After a few seconds, the guy falls and says these efforts aren't enough to completely destroy the monk bandit and his gang. Colleagues politely ask the dark-haired one for help. He unhappily asks what the matter is about. The group says they'd also like to get a promotion in rank. However, the guy doesn't understand why they're approaching him and how he can be useful. The group tries their best to please the new leader, offering him any help. However, the guy doesn't understand how colleagues can be useful in his affairs. Colleagues one by one start claiming they've always cared about the young man and supported him. But these words bring back memories from his life as a killer. The guy recalls Flower's women who were jealous of the professional thug's status. The female servants thugs claim he's an unnecessary element in the group, and the leader only values their lady. The lady with murder threats confidently strides toward the guy. The hero breaks from his memories and says he's ready to talk with colleagues only when they get promoted. Such confidence drives Charlie crazy, and she throws a punch at the guy while other colleagues restrain her emotions. The peaceful meeting is interrupted by the boss's appearance, who's interested if the group finished with work. He says he hates his subordinates, except for the newly minted corporal, and starts sucking up to him. Learning the news about Kyle's promotion, Mike and Chuck are terribly furious. They discuss that lately everyone in the department only revolves around the main hero. The men's conversation is interrupted by an elegant stranger who asks to show her the way. Chuck is rude to the girl and tells her to look up the route on her phone, but Mike is charmed by the woman's beauty. The pretty blonde says her mobile died, so she really needs help. The charmed men are happy to show the route to the woman. The young lady says she's looking for the way to the police department. The guys say they're just heading there and would be happy to keep her company. However, the woman is interested if they know Kyle. The thugs say yes. The lady reports that she specially prepared a valuable package for the dark-haired one. To reinforce her gratitude, she offers the men to taste some buns. The leadership carefully studies the data about Flower that the main hero collected. The mysterious Miss manufactures drugs of varying strength and operates financial schemes in China. The substances have an incredibly powerful effect and are used to neutralize elements unfavorable to the clan, Mike and Chuck included. The blonde appears in the department with that same package of buns. Burning knife and the leadership understand the seriousness of the situation. The red-haired one is interested if the elegant blonde lost something. The visitor with a monstrous look claims she lost magic Polonia flower leaves. Everyone in the department rushes to find the lady's lost object, but they don't have such material. She claims there's no need to rush, and the lost leaves are with Kyle. The dark-haired one's colleagues don't understand what she's talking about and what the woman demands. The dark-haired one tries to call for backup, but calls and cameras don't work due to signal jammers. The guy recalls his exhausting training from his past life, how they attacked him with full force with a stick to knock him out and knock him off his feet. However, the attackers couldn't do this because agile feet gave good results and the ability to take the initiative. Due to his skill, the hero couldn't find an equal opponent in strength. The clan head sent more and more new ones, but they fell one by one from the guy's blows. Eventually, the man asked to send everyone to paradise. However, the guy didn't want to finish off the innocent because he saw potential for growth in them. The monk strictly interrupted the young man and told him to forget about pity and humanity and just follow instructions. One of the fallen girls said she has the strength to fight further and is ready to battle to the very end. But the gang leader says if she wants to be useful, she should die and return reborn. The girl in despair begs him to spare her and let her continue training. However, the monk's servants don't listen to this and simply brutally neutralize her. The mafia head orders to destroy all bodies, but the guard notices one is still breathing and reports it. The man decides to leave her, and on the condition that she empties all plates of pills in 1 month. For this, he promises to make her an assistant. The girl went through all the tortures and became an obedient servant, receiving the title nickname Flower. For this, she received an artifact mask, but became drug-dependent. Moments of memories are interrupted by the blonde with a demand to return the magic herb. She brazenly climbs on Kyle, interfering with his work. Others are surprised by such impudence. The man says he hid her magic drugs at home and invites her to be a guest. He climbs off the table to escort her, but the blonde calls the guy an impudent liar. She's terribly furious and says he can't fool her that easily. The woman takes out drug packages from her purse and throws them at the hero with all her strength. The guy instinctively turns away, as a result of which the envelopes fly into colleagues' faces. They writhe in unbearable pain. Traces of poison remain on their bodies. At the same time, the lady's henchmen poison other department employees. The lady mockingly laughs and says if they're not saved, death will come quickly. The main hero with all his fury attacks the blonde directly, trying to take away the poison. Also attacking, the guy tears off the signal jammers from her blouse and calls for backup to catch the woman. The man says there's no one around, so this is the perfect moment to deal with the troublemaker. The woman desperately doesn't understand how a cop dares to commit such actions. The main hero takes out a baton and brutally threatens to beat all the stupidity out of the lady. She mocks him and complains about her torn blouse. The former killer isn't willing to listen to this and rushes at the woman as hard as he can, delivering a blow with the baton. To reinforce the brutal result, the guy attacks with his knee to the face and smashes the heroine's eyebrow. The woman is beside herself with anger and threatens death. The lady starts suspecting that before her is not an ordinary policeman, but someone from a special unit. She takes out a red packet with the strongest magic herb and applies it to her neck. The substance transforms the beauty into a real monster zombie. Headlong, like the wind, she attacks the main hero with all cruelty. But her plan is interrupted by a brutal blow right to the nose with a police baton. From this, she falls to the ground with an even more smashed face. The hero doesn't wish to spare the blonde and swings to deliver a series of strong blows. The woman tries to dodge. She manages to parry several of the hero's swings and temporarily calm his fervor. The guy says Flower hasn't changed at all and still relies on drugs, not her own strength. The woman doesn't understand why the man behaves as if he's known her all his life and is angry. Meanwhile, the guy doesn't waste time and confidently swings from below to deliver an incredibly powerful blow. With this skillful move, the man knocks her off her feet. The miss falls to the ground with full force and writhes in terrible pain. The policeman prepares for the final blow with the baton. He plans to pierce Flower's neck. He presses on the stick with all his strength with his hands. showering her with reproaches for drug addiction. At the word die, the man manages to complete his revenge plan and press hard with the baton. However, it turns out the weapon has no sting. The woman uses this and delivers a strong slap to the cop. The man has to get up to avoid more damage and temporarily leave the blonde alone. This allows her to catch her breath a bit and prepare for a dash counterattack. The guy in fear dodges it and notices an unusual detail on the lady. This detail turns out to be an unusual white-orange patch on the woman's forehead. Meanwhile, the infection from the magic herb begins to consume the guy's hands, turning him into a monster zombie. But from such an amount of magic poison, the woman only gets worse. Her eyes turn red from pain. One of Flower's henchmen bursts into the room and reports that help from B is already on the way. The man tells her to get out of the department, but at the next meeting promises brutal revenge. The lady orders her entourage to leave with her. The servant worries about the main one's appearance. She tears off the super strong patch and is nervous because the dark-haired one seems familiar to her. Medics arrive at the department and take the poisoned colleagues to the hospital. The general is furious that Knife let them escape and didn't catch them. The guy complains it's all because of poor quality equipment that can't inflict serious wounds. He shows the senior his infected hands, who calls a doctor for help. In the darkness, henchmen lie in wait for the main hero. The guy enters the room when they blow gas with an increased dose of drugs and say it can be lethal. But the man prepared in advance, putting on a gas mask and protective gear. He mocks that Flower was afraid of a personal meeting and prepares to shoot. The dark-haired one aims straight at the henchmen's heads while they say the weapons aren't real. But their reasoning about the authenticity of the equipment is interrupted by a barrage of shots to all parts of the body. The crippled men fall to the ground, the hero mocks. The terrible sounds attract the attention of nervous neighbors and police. Colleagues help detain Flower's faithful servants and tie them up for transportation. The general is interested if they're alive after such a rain of bullets. The guy reports, yes, because the bullets were rubber. The senior is surprised at such cruelty and asks himself again if this is really Burning Knife. But after evaluating the shot-up ones, he understands there's really a killer before him. The senior asks that with such fervor, he still hasn't killed the gang leader. He says he didn't attempt on the thug because the whole country values him as Buddha's reincarnation. The guy says that just killing the mafioso won't solve all problems. The general asks if there are other criminal groups. The man reports he's only interested in the brutal murder of the leader. The general reports he's ready to help in every possible way to put him in prison. The dark-haired one also adds that the reason the thug is still alive is that he can't organize such a large-scale murder on his own. For the failed operation, the monk brutally strangles Flower, not letting her speak the reason for the failure. She begs for mercy, but the man doesn't care and attacks the blonde with all his beastly fury. Having struck a blow, he mercilessly criticizes Flower's actions, condemns her for the poorly planned invasion of the department. She, tearfully trembling, begs the mafioso for mercy, but the senior absolutely doesn't care. He prepares to give her a brutal lesson. The woman sobs and says she's ready to do everything just to atone for her guilt. The girl's sobbing is heard by fellow female thugs who start mocking her drug addiction. This drives the blonde crazy. She asks who and why brought them here. The bandit Rose reports they were brought by the clan head. When the whole group is assembled, the thug announces the plan to destroy Flower. She, tearfully sitting on her knees, continues to beg for mercy and promises to return the destroyed drugs. The man informs there's no need for this, since he figured everything out himself. The female thugs continue to mock Flower's addiction and say such weaklings have no place in the organization. Rose reports only the strongest survive, and crybabies pay with their lives. The blonde in tears begs the leader for mercy. She complains that everyone was initially against her and wanted her destruction. Rose majestically presents the main bandit with a loaded pistol. The man accepts the gift and points the barrel straight at Flower, says he doesn't need useless servants. Just before the shot, the woman says she has developed a new drug 5 times stronger. The monk asks how much of the drug the woman managed to produce and says 10 kilos are distributed throughout Asia. For the full implementation of the plan, the woman asks for another 6 months from the leader. The man says he's already suffered a lot because of her, but is willing to give her a chance for 3 months if she can prove her usefulness. The hero's tears turn to happiness, and the woman promises to do everything possible just to stay alive. In the hospital, using Charlie as an example, it's shown how drugs affect intellectual activity. The woman behaves like a child. Others have to care for the red-haired one since she's unable to take care of herself. Colleagues envy yet another promotion of Kyle. The guy learns about this from them for the first time. The guy heads to the general's office where they discuss the possible appearance of a rat in the department. The general says he sent substances for examination, but they disappeared on the way. The dark-haired one promises to get even for this and asks to find more information about the drug baroness's subordinates. Knife asks about the special squad formed to investigate the clan case. The general reports all its members are dead. The guy suspects something wrong in the gray-haired one's words, gets angry and brutally slaps him. He says if he continues to hide important facts, he'll pay with his health even more. The general offers to create the guy's own new squad to investigate the case. The main hero protests since he's used to working quietly and on his own. The senior reports that for effective investigation and more funding, it's worth creating a team of professionals. His tone sharply changes to commanding, and the old man reports he can't form his squad since too many people are watching him. The hero says he's ready to execute the command if the general politely asks for it. His tone changes to friendly. The policeman's colleagues are surprised he's planning to gather his own team. They don't understand how a cop of such rank can create a squad, but the red-haired one is interested who will get on it. Kyle reports everyone from the department will get on it. Colleagues cry from joy and thank the guy for the honorable opportunity. They cry from happiness and promise to faithfully implement all commands they receive. He immediately reports he's not looking for comrades in the squad, but obedient duty performers and faithful servants of the law. Continuing his speech, he indicates he sees them only as slaves, serving as a living shield to implement his plans. The guy asks if the hierarchy is clear to them and tells them to call him sir. They're surprised by the dark-haired one's frankness and silently look at each other, not knowing what to answer. The man talks about a new subordinate, Charles, who turns out to be a tough nut, a martial arts lover, but not the smartest. Also, the guy introduces the skilled but emotional judoka Harvey. Other colleagues are also dissatisfied with his emotionality and ask him to be more restrained. Next, the dark-haired one talks about Charlie, who's unskilled in sports and is the weakest in the department. However, the girl is quite smart and cunning. She took first place on the written exam and interview. Charlie understands what an advantageous position she's in and promises to flawlessly execute all the master's orders. The guy gathers all colleagues for outdoor training. At first, they don't quite understand the essence of the meeting, but the dark-haired one orders them to start warming up. He explains the essence of the special training. The dark-haired one plays the role of an extremely dangerous killer whom the group must catch. Colleagues are in complete shock. They have no idea how to cope with the trained senior. Kind-hearted Harvey worries about the possibility of injuring the master leader. But this doesn't worry the dark-haired one. He reports he's giving 4 minutes to prepare a plan to catch him. The group gathers in a semicircle and starts thinking through details and discussing Kyle's recklessness. He says he hears their complaints perfectly and asks to pay more attention to training. Charlie takes the initiative in creating the plan. She suggests Charles pretend to attack Kyle while Harvey presses him to the ground. The latter says he's terribly afraid of causing harm to the dark-haired one. Charles asks how exactly he should act. The red-haired one says to use his boxing skills at full power. The team discussion is interrupted by Kyle's sharp announcement about the start of training and countdown. Charlie shouts to Charles to decisively advance on the dark-haired one to outsmart him. He takes a fighting stance. He doesn't know how to properly start the attack, so he just starts stomping in place. The former killer doesn't understand what's happening. Charlie shouts to him to move closer to the senior. The woman barely manages to finish speaking when the dark-haired one's incredibly powerful blow slashes Charles's face. The group is in panic. The woman commands Harvey to do something to save the situation and take the initiative. He jumps up and runs away from Kyle at full speed. He explains these actions by being very scared and not wanting to show his weak back. But Kyle doesn't let him escape, sharply and brutally catching the guy from behind. Good-natured Harvey tries his best to avoid a fight and turns the other way, but Kyle doesn't plan to let his subordinate go so easily, catches him, and delivers an incredibly powerful blow to the nose, calling him an idiot. The peaceful one sharply falls to the ground. Frightened Charlie watches this cruelty. The dark-haired one turns and decisively strides toward the girl, who begs to spare her and not hurt her since she's a woman. However, the guy absolutely doesn't care. He says all law enforcement officers are equal and delivers a brutal blow to the chin. The man complains about the terrible preparation of subordinates. He reproaches how such weaklings will catch real violators. He says he's only giving them 10 minutes to catch their breath, and after this, plans to repeat the training 3 more times. He says he'll train them to the last. The heroes try dejectedly to rest after the beatings. At headquarters, the general is interested in the team training's progress. The guy complains his team consists of weaklings. The senior asks him not to overload colleagues. The former killer is interested in how things are going with the interrogation and why there's no news about it. The general says he wants to achieve a confession to get more information. The guy says he'll interrogate Flower's subordinates himself to get testimony. The senior gives the green light but says torture during interrogation is forbidden. The man reports he has a good idea within the law and heads to implement it. He enters the basement where 2 mutilated henchmen are located. They say they'll be silent to the last. The man asks them about Flower's deputy. The thugs are shocked how he knows about her. The guy says he knows the state of affairs since he's that same burning knife. The thugs are surprised by these words since they know the colleague has long been dead. The former killer says he's already met with one of the thugs and notes the traces of pins on his body. The guy asks if these scars were received for drug smuggling and left by Flower. Former colleagues recognize knife, and he explains the mafia head instructed him to fake his own death to penetrate the police system. He says he knows the drug baroness invaded the department to find the lost drugs. The thugs are surprised. The young man angrily asks where the leader is. The main hero says he jammed the connection so the violators can be calm about their own skins and the leader's fate depends on their words, and adds that if she so innocently lies low, by the mafia head's order, he'll be forced to kill her. The henchmen report there's no need to worry about Flower's fate because she's developing a new incredibly powerful drug. The policeman suggests discussing the new drug's possibilities in more detail. Having gathered all the information, the guy passes it to the general for processing. He reports the woman is developing a drug 5 times stronger than the previous one and in 6 months plans to spread it throughout Asia. The senior is interested if they manage to find out Flower's location. The guy says this information can only be obtained at the henchman's headquarters. The woman sits in her own office and thinks over business plans. A manager bursts in and asks if the deadline isn't too harsh. Chester agrees with the manager's words and tells the lady to hold her horses. The men suggest asking for more time from the boss. The woman panics since she can't do this and asks if they'll take responsibility if she gets scolded again. Assistant Piper confidently assures she's ready to take all responsibility and asks what happened while she was away. Flower is terribly furious since she set a deadline and the team must meet it at any cost. The lady hands out assignments to the men for preparing all materials and procedures. They listen carefully. To her assistant, the leader gives the most important task of overseeing processes and promises she'll control everything and always support the leader. Meanwhile, the group of policemen continues outdoor training. Kyle announces a new round of hunting for him after a 10-minute break. The red-haired one is furious since she doesn't understand the purpose of harsh training and says he has no right to force them. The dark-haired one emphasizes the police agreed to this themselves. Charlie continues to complain unhappily. She says everyone join the team to catch real violators, not fight with a colleague. Kyle promises them practice and leads them forward. Surprised by such a turn of events, the group comes to abandoned warehouses. There they notice drug dealers with that same pile of envelopes with magic herb. The bandits are terribly unhappy with the law enforcement officer's appearance and don't understand how this could happen. The defenders of order are extremely confused since they haven't had similar outings before. They ask what to do. The dark-haired one says to catch the thugs. Colleagues look at each other in surprise. The guy pushes the team inside with all his strength and closes the door so they can't escape. The main drug dealer orders security to brutally destroy the policemen. Kyle smirks maliciously through the door and wishes his group a successful operation. The thugs take combat positions and prepare to attack. The group of cops backs away, frightened since they're getting into the epicenter of events for the first time. The men panic terribly and don't know how to act. The red-haired one takes initiative and tells them to calm down. She says that although Kyle is cruel, he wouldn't let them die so easily, motivates the guys not to give up and boldly go into battle. Through the window, the main hero watches his subordinates' actions and notes Charlie's smart plan and calm. The woman desperately tells them to go straight into attack to deliver the first blow to opponents. With all fury, Charles rushes first into fistfight. However, the thug turns out to be more agile and intercepts the initiative, concentrating all strength in the blow. Other participants are surprised how Charles exposed his head directly to the opponent. The blow is directed straight at the policeman's forehead, but surprisingly, the man doesn't feel pain at all compared to Kyle's beatings. Toughness from previous training allows the man to easily endure blow after blow and take initiative into his own fists. Thanks to this, he counterattacks straight into the bandit's stomach. The first defeated thug drives the guy into excitement and he calls others to attack him. However, not all his opponents are honest and ready to attack from behind using metal sticks. The man doesn't expect such a turn of events and looks around frightened at the weapon's whistle. Harvey doesn't let the treacherous plan happen, attacking the thug from behind and knocking him off his feet. The first victory awakens beastly fervor and faith in his own strength in the calm guy. Kyle closely watches the fight and says if he trains the guys more, they'll make excellent law enforcement officers. Meanwhile, aside, the red-haired one enthusiastically motivates others to fight. Such weakness of his own team greatly enrages the drug baron and he yells at his subordinates. The man furiously tears off his clothes and heads to help his guards to set an example of a real thug. The guys look at each other frightened and don't know what to do next. The enraged big guy uses the moment and madly attacks Harvey, smashing his face. From the force of the blow, the policeman flies back. A colleague asks if he's alive. At the same moment, the thug boss prepares to attack Charles too, concentrating forces for a new blow. Kyle continues watching and says, the subordinates need to train even more for the level of real pros. The thug's boss, meanwhile, knocks Charles to the ground and mocks his weakness. Charlie kneels before the thug and says she's willing to tell all secrets, just not to be hurt. Such a turn of events irritates and disappoints Kyle since he expected more from the woman. However, this all turns out to be part of the redhead's cunning plan. From her pocket she takes out a stun gun. Without hesitating for a second, the woman puts it to the bandit, who writhes in wild pain. However, the big guy manages to jump back, and he starts swinging to deliver a blow with his foot straight into the redhead's face. Kyle doesn't let the thug implement his plan, unexpectedly appearing and deflecting him straight into the gut. The thug writhes in severe pain and flies back onto the table. The redhead is surprised by such unexpected reinforcement from the boss. Kyle asks the group if they understood how it is to work in real combat conditions. Everyone doesn't know what to answer. The man adds, this isn't the end and they need to finish what was started by getting the narcotic substance. He orders the group to follow him and listen carefully to every order. When the cops left, Flower's henchman entered the room. The drug baron wasn't even allowed to make excuses because the manager immediately dealt with him for the shameful result. The man's attention was drawn to a special business card of burning knife left on the table. The dark-haired one demonstrates the seized drugs to the general, who says the group can act according to the previously approved plan. The senior says he wants to introduce an officer who will participate in the operation and calls her into the office. She turns out to be a militant senior officer, Chloe. The newcomer's attention is immediately drawn to Kyle's relaxed appearance. The woman shows all her fierceness and orders the hero to stand up as a sign of respect. The dark-haired one isn't ready to tolerate such lawlessness and says she should force him to do it. The guy says the difference in ranks doesn't matter to him. This greatly drives the madam crazy. The senior throws a harsh and distrustful look at Kyle. The general is nervous due to tension between new acquaintances. He asks to stop the quarrels, but Chloe ignores the words and swings her leg at the main hero. The man doesn't expect this. However, professional training does its job, and he manages to jump away from the blow. The woman continues, attempts to beat up the guy, but he parries her every move. Such impudent actions drive her crazy, and she attacks the dark-haired one with all fury. The lady extends her hands to squeeze her colleague's neck. He notes her skill compared to his team. However, the guy turns out to be more skilled and cunning, so with all his strength delivers a blow to the jaw. From this, Chloe falls bewildered straight onto the main hero's knees. He mocks the fact that the lady wanted to force him to stand up, and instead, she mercilessly lies there herself. The mockery drives her crazy. Chloe quickly gets to her feet and swings for another strong blow, aiming at the guy's cheek. However, he skillfully dodges each and every attack and evaluates the woman's physical fitness. The general, meanwhile, calmly snacks, not interfering. Later, the senior takes investigation documents and starts reading everything known about Flower and her group, mentions they gather at headquarters every last weekend. The man insists on starting to act and implement the attack plan, but Chloe opposes and says the information from the report shouldn't be trusted. Hank says Kyle collected all the data himself and there's no basis for suspicion, but the woman states that when she questioned him, he was silent. Kyle is enraged by such behavior, and he says they should be grateful for what they have. This terribly angers Chloe, and she says he has no right to contradict her. She says she's willing to believe only real testimony and rushes to interrogate the henchman herself again, but the general forbids it. The senior says the henchmen are dead. This fact incredibly irritates the militant woman. Kyle complains about terrible security in the building. Hank emphasizes to colleagues to prepare well for the next meeting and get along with each other. Chloe wants to know details of Flower's servant's death. However, the chief isn't willing to reveal the secret and asks Kyle to stay in the office. The woman extremely reluctantly heads to the door and emphasizes she's a pro at shooting and has a target on his head. Finally, she leaves the office. The impudent behavior extremely angers calm Kyle, who complains unhappily. He's interrupted by the general, who shows a card find from the henchman's death site. The guy is extremely surprised since he recognizes it as a signature business card with a crane. The drug baroness finds an identical one, but with a man's image, and is terribly nervous. The managers worry and suggest reporting the terrible and unusual find to the gang leader. Flower panics since she realizes Burning Knife is actually dead and worries the mafia head will beat her up for this. Thoughts drive her crazy. However, the woman tries to hold on and says if they stick to the plan, everything will be fine. However, she doesn't manage to control herself and breaks down. The men ask to call Piper for help. She appears and starts treating the soul and calming her colleague leader. Resting, the lady orders the thugs to continue sticking to the developed plan. They obediently agree. Chester reports the situation is extremely difficult now since the police learned about all the drug dealers' intentions. Flower trustingly orders Piper to help colleague managers, says if she stresses, plans might go down the drain. The dark-haired one agrees and tells the thugs to come to her. The girl presents men with a special type of drugs. She cleaned herself. Without thinking, they accept the magic gift, pressing it to their bodies and turning into rabid zombies. The substances instill excessive confidence, and they assure they'll do everything to fully execute the leader's plan. At the same time, Kyle continues team training outdoors. This time, only the red-haired one appeared, who reports the men are in the hospital. The woman shouts to seize the moment and begs the master for rest. The man gets angry over this. He reports that until others recover, he'll conduct special secret pair training for Charlie. Kyle says she's in terrible physical form. The girl is extremely nervous and embarrassed about this. The guy reports they're planning to send them on an important mission soon, and if she doesn't improve her strength, she'll die. The man ponders how they took her into the police and recommends focusing on strong sides and not hiding weaknesses. He explains the training principle to the red-haired one, says to imagine instead of a folded rubber baton, a real knife, and instead of an unfolded one, a striking weapon. The guy confidently starts advancing on the red-haired one while she's nervous. Panic overwhelms the girl. She doesn't understand what the senior wants from her and how to resist him. He reports that in a few minutes, she'll learn everything firsthand and smirks maliciously. Bewildered men pulled themselves together at the gathering place. During their absence, Kyle managed to thoroughly mock the red-haired one and bring her to tears. The thugs bewilderedly ask what happened between colleagues. The dark-haired one says they'll soon find out themselves. The guys panic extremely and say they're willing to live without this information. However, these objections don't interest Kyle, and he continues exhausting training for the group for 15 days until the start of a special operation. After the mentioned interval, the group is well equipped and discusses all events that happened at training. On the way, they discuss the mysterious operation that even Chloe was involved in. A group of well-armed police heads to the designated place when a captain stops them. Before the team stands the entrance to a tunnel guarded by devoted henchmen of Flower. They're surprised by their appearance when Chloe attacks the thugs as hard as she can. The woman swings her weapon well to deliver an incredibly powerful first blow. The stick hits straight into the servant's face and knocks him off balance. The second henchman panics and backs away since he's thinking through a counterattack. He takes out a small knife from his pocket, intending to stick it straight into the policewoman. However, the girl doesn't let him implement the plan since with all fury, she delivers a kick under his jaw. The group of law enforcement officers is surprised by such quick skill of the leader. She reports data about destroyed henchmen to main headquarters and announces she's starting the main phase of the operation. The group decides to walk deeper into the tunnel, but the woman leader says to hold the horses. She says to stay everyone and keep watch over the neutralized enemies. The team is surprised and dissatisfied with this request. The woman says the plan to connect her with ordinary cops was a mistake from the start. Charlie objects since she believes the group is excellently prepared and deserves to gain honor in the operation. Chloe is terribly irritated by the redhead's objections and says she allows the team to go further only through Kyle's instruction. The well-armed group prepares to clear the tunnel and waits for the leader's order. The team measuredly starts descending the stairs. Men with shields cover the shooters. Finally, tensely they reach the main door of the hideout. The group confidently bursts through them inside and begins a confident and fast assault. However, instead of well-armed warriors, they're met by zombie youth poisoned by Flower's drugs. Chloe panics at the unusual picture since she's encountering such a phenomenon for the first time. Chester calmly watches the law enforcement officer's decisive invasion. The man takes out a radio to inform everyone present in the club about the Defenders of Order's invasion. Chloe panics terribly at the situation and number of possible enemies. The manager offers youth unlimited access to drugs for a month for each caught and delivered cop to him. The crowd breaks loose and brutally attacks law enforcement officers. The previously self-confident and cruel woman falls into panic and doesn't understand how to plan further actions. She orders defenders to raise shields to block the zombie crowd. Cops obediently execute the instruction, but there are too many youth. They rush from everywhere. Law enforcement officers try with all their strength to restrain brutal attacks of monsters and cover others. The manager ironizes about the situation since he understands they can't just shoot people because they'll have problems with the law. The main one orders the group to put on masks, and at that moment takes out a tear gas grenade. She skillfully throws it straight into the rabid crowd of drug addicts. The grenade explodes, filling the room with acrid smoke. The lady commands to start pushing zombies back. However, it turns out the gas doesn't affect the youth at all, and they continue to fiercely storm cops through tears. The manager mocks this and orders to collect all available drugs and take Piper out through the back entrance. The team continues to desperately restrain the crowd within their legal powers. However, the leader's attention is drawn to an unexpected whistle from running behind. Reinforcement bursts into the room and advancing jumps straight onto colleagues' heads. The impudent and sharp attack draws the attention of the calm drug dealer. The armed policeman boldly and with all strength flies through the crowd straight in his direction. The cop prepares to deliver a confident blow, clutching a knife in his left hand. The man flies straight past the manager's temple, confusing him. But the law enforcer's target turns out to be not Chester, but his radio, into which a knife was lightning fast stuck. These actions cause panic in him. The attacker says he wrongly underestimated his combat training. The bandit wonders how he knows about his abilities. At the same time, the group of law enforcement officers tries to restrain the rabid crowd with all possible forces. Chloe commands to pile on them with all available power. The drug dealer mocks the girls' reckless actions since he understands they won't give the desired result. However, his words are interrupted by the law enforcement officer who with all power cuts the man's stomach crosswise. The cry of pain draws Chloe's attention, who helps the group resist the invasion of rabid zombies. The thug writhes in hellish pain, but Kyle doesn't plan to stop at the given injuries and grabs him by the neck with all fury. The policeman presses the drug dealer with all his might against the wall and mocks his weak condition. He says the wound isn't fatal and swings to deliver another blow to the violator and says he promised not to kill anyone. However, the guy unexpectedly takes out a knife and super quickly swings it. But the man doesn't use the weapon, instead beats the violator's hands with his own fists. Kyle's incredibly powerful beastly blows make Chester writhe in hellish pain. He reports he has no intention of taking his life if he obediently presses against the wall. The man asks what kind of monster is before him. Kyle has no intention of revealing his true nature and delivers a final, incredibly powerful kick to him. Meanwhile, Chloe's group managed to neutralize the whole zombie crowd. The woman commands to follow her upward. The group obediently executes the instruction. However, her attention is drawn to a bloodied knife sticking out of the wall. She doesn't understand what happened. Without wasting time, the criminal plastered his own wrists with drugs to stop the hellish pain and bleeding. He again asks himself who he just fought with and is interested if the monster isn't from Chloe's squad. Meanwhile, the main hero heads through a spacious corridor strewn with corpses of neutralized enemies. The guy calls Flower to meet with him face to face. Chloe's squad managed to climb to the drug dealer and prepare to attack the man. However, such actions don't scare him one bit. Monstrous Chester says he hasn't seen so many cops since he left the service. The rabid man reveals his identity and names the team he served in, simultaneously pointing the gun barrel at the cops. Chloe is extremely surprised by this news and orders the team to start fire assault. Meanwhile, the squad of Kyle left on the street worries about the commander's fate since the group heard shots inside. Charlie complains they weren't taken to the epicenter, but used simply as a living shield. The group supports the girls' complaints. However, unexpectedly, one of the main managers of Lady Flower appears behind them. The man asks the group why they came and what they're doing here. The team panics and looks at each other. The group sharply stands up to start a decisive attack on the arrived thug. Charlie takes out a stun gun from her pocket and directs it straight at the thug and shoots an electric wire, but he stands in place and doesn't run. The big guy snatches the rod like nothing happened. The group of cops is terribly impressed by such confidence and frightened. The weapon is neutralized. The police panic and don't know how to go on the offensive against the thug. Meanwhile, Chloe's team continues fire assault on the drug baron, but due to the ban on using real bullets in the country, the shooting is done with rubber bullets. The woman realizes if they continue in the same spirit, there'll be no deal and takes to changing the plan. She directs to replace rubber bullets with real ones. Chloe reports the intention to change cartridges to the bandit and tells him to surrender to stay alive since he's in an extremely serious condition. However, the man says he'd rather die a bloody death than live out the rest of his life in prison without drugs. The woman is irritated by the man's stupid words, and she insists that life is many times more important than substances. The man tells how his life turned upside down when he found the magic herb, but through addiction, it stopped bringing pleasure. He says Flower's team and her special offer helped change the state of affairs. The woman offered him candy with the best substances the gang has. The lollipop managed to give a new feeling of euphoria after dulling receptors to usual substances. However, Flower set the condition that she'll create an even stronger drug if he joins her group. Crazed by the incredibly powerful effect of substance, the man said he's willing to do anything to get a larger and stronger dose. However, the lady warned that sweets shouldn't be abused, only one per day is allowed, otherwise there'll be dire consequences. Remembering the past, the man realizes he doesn't care now whether to keep this promise or not. The drug dealer in one gulp takes out a bunch of lollipops and in agony sucks them, complaining this is many times more hellish than death. Meanwhile, Chloe orders the team to load guns and prepare for shooting. However, the woman's shout is interrupted by the sharp shot of the drug dealer's bullet flying straight toward the policewoman. However, thanks to her skilled hearing, the woman hears the whistle and manages to duck and avoid being hit. She's surprised by the unusual property of ammunition. They ricochet off walls. The incredibly powerful substances made themselves known, and the crazed and barely alive drug dealer rose to make another shot straight at Chloe. However, the woman has no shortage of skill. She sharply jumps aside, remaining unharmed. At the same moment, reinforcement of new henchmen with pistols bursts into the hall. They start firing in all directions. Cops start a counterattack, attacking enemies one by one and neutralizing them. Kyle also successfully fights against the crowd of henchmen, destroying everyone who stands in the way. Piper, who's lying in wait for the guy in the office, hears the wild sounds of the fight. Having cleared the room, the guy opens the grand doors and looks straight at Piper. She says she heard about the guy from Flower. The woman reports she herself planned to visit the former thug, but he turned out to be quicker. The guy asks if she received the card as a gift. The woman is surprised how the man knows about clan items and asks who he is. Meanwhile, Chloe and the squad continue shooting, but with changed bullets. Real cartridges pierce right through the table behind which the man was hiding and riddle him like a sieve. However, even after the fire barrage and hitting the man, the woman directs not to lower weapons and continue. Crazed by the actions of the lollipop substances, the man throws the shield table straight into the crowd of cops. The group is frightened by such force and jumps aside to protect themselves from the incoming object. Chloe worries the bandit might die from extremely severe wounds and drugs. The crazed man behaves like a real beast and madly crawls toward the group of law enforcement officers. They don't know how to act and cover themselves with shields in surprise so as not to harm the man. However, the bandit doesn't stand on ceremony with the policemen and brutally attacks one of them with a knife in the jaw. The bloodied man falls to the ground dead. Chloe is frightened by such a sharp attack of the dropout. He says they wrongly underestimated his abilities as a former cop and advises to be more careful. With monstrous fervor from substances, the man breaks through the group of cops heading toward frightened Chloe. The wounded and bloodied monster points the gun barrel straight at the woman and smiles smugly. The guy presses the trigger, hoping to kill the woman, but she pushes the thug back with all her strength with her foot. The drug dealer flies to the wall and groans in hellish pain. The woman doesn't waste time and releases a merciless rain of bullets in his direction. From such an incredibly powerful counterattack, the bloodied monster collapses on his back. After sharp and cruel actions, she orders the group to check the manager's condition. He turns out to be dead. The woman starts to panic terribly since she realizes she seriously violated the internal statute. However, her thoughts are interrupted by the criminal's words that he's still alive and the sound of throwing a smoke grenade he saved for last. The woman notices the dangerous object and commands everyone to disperse so as not to get hurt. However, the group doesn't have time to execute the command and ends up right in the epicenter of the explosion, complaining they can't see anything through the dust. Suddenly, a gunshot sounds. A bullet arrives to a policeman straight in the back of the head. He falls. The woman is terribly irritated by irrational actions and the commotion of combat comrades. She doesn't understand how one can behave so impulsively and raise a racket. Police continue to panic and look around, taking no actions or counterattack. Meanwhile, the man continues having fun. He smugly kills cops one by one. Each shot hits straight in the forehead and is lethal for the law enforcement officer. Survivors panic terribly since the shots don't think of subsiding and they haven't had similar difficult missions. Police look around frightened in hope of finding the place from where the brutal shooting is being carried out. Chloe falls to the ground stunned since she worries terribly about her own life and can't find the bandits' hiding place. Suddenly, in the veil of smoke, a mysterious crimson silhouette is visible. The woman ponders whether it's enemy or friend. Coming closer, she notices a pistol directed straight at her. This picture makes the woman anxiously raise her gaze upward to identify the shadow. It turns out to be that same drug dealer who organized the brutal shooting. The man is completely covered in blood. The woman looks intently at him to understand whether he's still breathing or not. Gradually, the fog from the grenade dissipates and she notices all the killed brothers in arms around in blood. This picture terribly frightens her. Tears approach her eyes on their own, and the previously self-confident woman screams in panic. Feelings sharply overwhelm the girl, and standing up, she doesn't know what to do next, since before this, she hadn't encountered such serious miscalculations in missions. Fear and despair take hold of her, and the woman starts sobbing uncontrollably and shaking. Meanwhile, Feral Mason is chasing Kyle's frightened squad. The man is irritated by such cowardly actions of law enforcement officers since he hoped for a fierce fight. Charlie complains about the thug's terrible strength and runs away frightened. At training, Kyle taught the group basic self-defense skills. He explained the weakest human spots and how to aim at them quickly to cause the most damage. Although the practice was extremely difficult, the tired group learned the lesson well. The police decided to repeat techniques from training in battle against Mason, but the weapon turned out to be non-lethal and he only laughed at the failures. The group is forced to run away again with all their might to save themselves from death and not fail the mission. Exhausted and out of breath, Charlie begs Kyle to help them and save them from the thug. Running away, they run straight into the club and look around frightened and see piles of bodies. This picture causes terrible panic in Kyle's subordinates. The team doesn't understand what happened. In the very center, the group notices frightened Chloe sitting on her knees. They ask why everyone around is dead and what preceded this. However, the conversation is unexpectedly interrupted by Mason, who monstrously and quietly approached from behind. He praises his comrade drug baron for good clearance of the room. But when he raises his gaze to his colleague, he notices he's sitting breathlessly by the wall with a pistol in his hand. This scene causes enormous fear and panic on Mason's face. Meanwhile, Kyle is talking in the office with Piper. The man wants to find out where Flower is hiding. The lady seeks to cloud the dark-haired one's mind and says he's a very interesting and extraordinary person, and that if they were in other circumstances, she'd invite him for tea. Such selfish behavior drives the man crazy, and he attacks the woman with all his might to punch her in the face while she takes out a drug package. The guy manages to deliver an incredibly powerful blow, as a result of which Piper flies back with a whistle. He says he's not so easily fooled and that substances won't help her. However, the woman has no intention of listening to others' instructions and continues trying to apply the leaf to herself. Kyle isn't satisfied with such a turn of events, and he swings with all his might at her with his foot to knock the object out of the lady's hand. He manages to implement his own patch thanks to a brutal blow to the hand. The envelope flies far aside. The woman screams in pain. However, she anticipated a similar development of events, so she hid a pill between her teeth. But Kyle's no fool, so he calculated this too and grabbed the blue-haired one by the cheeks so she wouldn't have time to use the drug. The man carefully took the pill from Piper's mouth to use it as evidence. Such confident and impudent actions extremely angered her, and she started struggling with all her might to break free from the guy's hands. However, the man's grip is many times stronger than the woman's attempts. Kyle mocks her helplessness without drugs and mercilessly throws her on the ground. The dark-haired one presses her elegant neck and starts finding out where Flower is. He starts calling the main drug baroness a coward and a rag since she mercilessly throws henchmen into battle. Piper resists and says she's not a coward. Suddenly, papers fly into the guy's back. This makes him turn his gaze back to see what's happening. It turns out a group of children threw them, who entered the office through the wide open door. The kids started yelling at the man, which caused surprise and misunderstanding in him. However, Piper reports they came too late and that they'd better go back. A self-confident girl desperately rushes with a sharpened knife forward, trying to pierce Kyle, but the guy quickly jumps away. He delivers a blow in response to the kid's back. She writhes in pain and surprise. From the force of the trained man, she quickly and miserably falls to the ground. However, two daredevils come to help their friend, who also want to stab the dark-haired one. But the guy skillfully jumps back, as a result of which the children also fall forward and lose their cold weapons. He seriously and harshly asks Piper's further action plan. At that time, the woman managed to stick red patches with substances and started mutating into a zombie. Looking at the children, the law enforcement officer recalls his childhood and asks what right the woman had to touch innocent children. With a sharp leg movement, he kicks up and catches the knife to arm himself and says, "Piper's end has come now." This moment brings the woman memories of training as a child in the clan. She recalls how she watched the dark-haired one's brutal fight against the elder. The head asks if a new skilled burning knife stands before them and whether he can finish off his predecessor. The young man sharply swings at the opponent and delivers an X-shaped blow to him. The head of the bandits tells the story of the elder burning knife, that before the young man's arrival, he managed to cut down all the clan's children except that one. The mafioso says to look more carefully at the scars the guy leaves on the elder's body and compares them to willow leaves, and says he must take the role of the new burning knife and become famous in the criminal world. From memories, the woman is torn by identical movements of Kyle's knife that slash her body. The bloodied lady says she finally understood everything and that before her is that same burning knife. Endless blows left on the woman's tender body bring her to a pre-death state. She's barely breathing. However, the man doesn't plan to retreat. He presses the woman into the floor with all his strength with his foot and asks where Flower is hiding. He reports that in any case he'll brutally kill her, but if she tells where the drug baroness is hiding, death will be easier. Meanwhile, the woman remembers how the mafia head transferred her title and control of the drug business to Flower. Also adds that every full moon there's a transfer of rank and brutal murder of the predecessor. But Flower decided not to continue this merciless tradition and leave Piper, even despite the fact she tried to poison her. She wonders what she hoped for when she tried to implement this senseless plan and why she conceived it. Flower in tears and despair asks why Piper hates her and why everyone she knows is so cruel to her. She tearfully tells about her path of struggle for survival and efforts to obtain title and recognition in the clan. The heartfelt and frank story touches Piper since she faced similar difficulties on her own path. Flower stands up and says if she drinks the poison in the glass, her predecessor will be forced to love her. The blue-haired one is surprised by such a turn of events and doesn't know how to react. Flower in one gulp empties the goblet, and bloody tears start pouring from her eyes. She asks if she finally likes her. Such a straightforward stunt melted the ice in Piper's heart, and she understood what people call love. Finishing her delirium, the woman returns to reality and says she's not ready to betray the one she felt love for under any circumstances. Kyle is terribly angered by the refusal and swings with all his might and delivers a final blow to the face. Although the punch was strong, Mrs. Piper still had strength left and says Flower will return to the office and all the tricks with children are her doing and asks not to kill the younger colleague for them. Meanwhile, Flower, treated with incredibly powerful substances, rushes through the city on a motorcycle. Meanwhile, in the club, everyone worries about their comrades' fates. Mason runs to Chester and Charlie to Chloe. The red-haired one yells at the senior in irritation and tells her to pull herself together, and as reinforcement gives her a slap. These actions don't give results and she asks others in the group to help her. Meanwhile, Mason is furious about his colleague's death. He used all the incredibly powerful envelopes with substances, and from the effect of drugs with all fury, started an assault on the police. Law enforcement officers are very frightened by such sharp actions and don't know how to deliver a counterattack. The man uses the moment of panic and knocks down two well-armed cops with one hand. However, he doesn't stop there and attacks other law enforcement officers, knocking them down one by one. Charlie panics and tries to bring to their senses colleagues who are numb from such force and skill. However, the thug doesn't stop for a minute and extends his palm to grab and hurt the woman. However, Kyle ruins the drug dealer's cruel intention, lightning fast slashing his hand. Stopping after the attack, the guy says he won't let anyone hurt his own team. The man heads to Chester to examine him for evidence and complains about the terrible preparation of professional cops. Mason doesn't waste time and swings with all his might at the dark-haired one to knock him out. However, he skillfully puts up a solid shield, which makes the thug writhe in hellish pain. After this, the dark-haired one commands subordinates to deal with the children who attacked him. The guy loads the weapon and says he'll deal with others present on his own. Mason mockingly substitutes the bodies of two zombies and says to aim straight at them without doubt. The man opens fire without doubt, but instead of the zombie's body, the bullet hits straight in the big guy's shoulder. He didn't expect such a turn of events and throws the bodies on the ground and grabs the affected area. Kyle says he has no intention of killing him since he needs more information. Such impudent words drive Mason crazy, and he attacks straight at the man hoping to cripple him. However, the guy calculates such a stunt and accurately shoots him in the legs, which makes the big guy fall to his knees in pain. He commands the squad to report that their team is heading to base. They obediently and without objections execute the order. Examining the shooting site, the guy notes how pathetic Chloe's actions and her operation planning turned out to be. But Charlie tears him from philosophical thoughts, asking to help tie up the wounded drug dealer. The guy is irritated by such childish helplessness and says it would be better if they kept quiet, but his complaints and dissatisfaction are interrupted by the sharp and lightning-fast appearance of Flower right on a motorcycle. The woman on the bike accelerates straight at the cop, not thinking about consequences. Meanwhile, the guy takes out a weapon and starts aiming to deliver an accurate shot at the daredevil. However, the lady has no fear and right on the vehicle snatches the weapon from him. Such a lightning-fast and skilled appearance of the leader causes incredible admiration on Mason's face. The group of cops is frightened by such a show and recognizes the girl from the department. Meanwhile, Flower starts reporting to Mason the escape plan she came up with and says to gather all henchmen to follow her. The frightened drug dealer reports that except for him, no one alive remains. This news frightens the newcomer. She turns her head and sees the terribly mutilated monstrous corpse of Chester and gets even more frightened. Kyle brutally confirms the fact of death of all her faithful henchmen. This fact drives the young lady into furious despair and makes her take out a weapon hidden in her jacket as a last resort. They turn out to be small drug bombs that fit between fingers. The woman swings to hit the young man with them and says she'll destroy him with her own hands. The dark-haired one only smugly mocks Flower's words and prepares for defense. This moment brings him memories from the past when he was resting after brutal training. Then, Young Flower sat down next to him and started asking if everything was okay with him after the monk's punishment. The guy in response is interested how the girl feels after a similar case and says she's to blame herself since she's too weak. The young woman adds she's very glad the dark-haired one got a name and promotion up the criminal ladder and says she also dreams of getting these benefits. She says there are terrible relationships at the top and asks if Knife won't forget about their friendship if she ever gets there. However, memories and thoughts are interrupted by sounds of explosions of drug bombs, which, although not dangerous, reduce the field of view. But the woman doesn't plan to stop at explosives alone and rides the bike straight at the cop. He anticipates such a development of events and skillfully jumps aside to stay alive.